Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding. We are very happy today to have the speaker addressing I suppose, an issue that's a mixture of Muslim Christian understanding, early Islamic history, and just pure controversy. It's a good mixture. And our speaker is Dr. John Morrow from Ivy Tech Northeast in Indiana. And he is originally Canadian. We were discussing this. He's from Montreal, but can I tell them what your... This is very interesting. He is, what is the word?
Métis.
Métis. He is a member of the Métis
People.
I was going to really say something. Ethnic group. Métis ethnic group, which is about 1% of the population. Mixture of First Nation and, to use the Canadian term, I suppose, and French settlers. So we're discussing some of the, archaic language, Creole of that community. And he got his honors, BA, MA, and PhD at the University of Toronto. What department was that in?
The Department of Spanish and Portuguese.
Department of Spanish and Portuguese.
I did Hispanic studies.
Okay.
And as part of my Hispanic studies, I did Islamic studies, the Moriscos, Al-Jamiado literature, and so on. And also did indigenous studies. So I ended up focusing on Hispanic studies, Native studies, and...
That's good. Unusual direction to approach early Islamic history, but I like.
Yes.
I appreciate diversity in my field since we tend to have groupthink. He also did postdoctoral studies in Arabic in Morocco at the University of Utah's Middle Eastern Center. He's also studied a lot with traditional Muslim scholars in Canada, and I served as a faculty member and administrator at numerous colleges and universities. He's authored and edited numerous books, including The Covenants of the Prophet Muhammad, which is this one, Encyclopedia of Islamic Herbal Medicine, Religion and Revolution, Spiritual and Political Islam, and Islamic Images and Ideas, Essays of Sacred Symbolism. And this talk discusses all the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad, or are you specifically talking about the one in St Catherine Monastery?
Just that.
So it's specifically about a document that is found in, Achtiname?
Yes.
Achtiname of Muhammad, a covenant that was in the Monastery of St Catherine in Mount Sinai, which is claimed to be an agreement between the Prophet Muhammad and the monks of the monastery. And the questions around this issue are numerous. Is it authentic? Is it a forgery? Where does it come from? What does it mean? So these are the things that we'll be learning about today. And then here's a copy of the book if anyone's interested in looking at it later.
It's both a pleasure and a privilege to be here today in order to share a small fraction of my research with you. As you may know, I'm Dr. John Andrew Morrow, the author of The Covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the World, a work in which I provide a survey of the letters and treaties of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Almighty Allah be upon him and his household, along with a detailed study of 6 covenants concluded by the Messenger of Allah with Christian communities in the Sinai, Egypt, Palestine, Assyria, Najran, and Persia. Today, however, I will focus on a single text, the Achtiname, namely the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai. And here is the Sinai. And here is an ancient painting of the Monastery of St Catherine. All right, you will notice that there is a church. Next to the church there is a masjid, and there's a minaret there. All right. Here is a recent photo of the monastery. So you have the church tower and the minaret next to one another. The Monastery of St Catherine is famous, of course, for St Catherine. Famous also for the burning bush. Believe it or not, the bush still exists. And boy, does that thing grow. It grows and it grows and it grows. It grew so much, they were so tired, the monks, of pruning it and trimming it, they decided to douse it with gasoline. And it burned. It was the burning bush. Of course, famous for the well of Moses. And this here, yes, this here is the area at the top of Mount Sinai where Moses is reported to have received the Ten Commandments. All right, so here you have another image of the mosque and the church tower. Only place in the world right now where a mosque and a church coexist together. It was actually quite common in the early days of Islam. I can touch upon that a little bit later. This here is the inside of the Jami Mosque. So this is the mosque inside the compound of the St. Catherine's Monastery. And this is the mosque at the top of Mount Sinai. This is the Masjid of Fatima. And this is built on top of a cave. This is the inside of the masjid at the top of Mount Sinai. And this masjid is built on top of a cave where the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is said to have meditated. Okay, this was before the declaration of prophecy. I will deal with that a little bit later. And here's the inside of that mosque. And here is a footprint of Burak. All right, this mystical beast that carried the Prophet from Mecca to the Sinai to Jerusalem, Damascus, and all of that. So here is a copy of the Achtiname, right, the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai. This copy here dates to 1638. I actually have a copy of this document. I was going to bring it to you, but unfortunately I forgot. So perhaps you'll have to invite me again and I will remember to bring it. But I have a high-resolution picture, and then I printed it out in full color, and I had it laminated, and it's just stunning. You can look at it in detail, and so on. The copy of the Achtiname, this one right here, was given to me by this gentleman. This is Father Justin of Sinai from Texas. Yes, a typical Texan. Yes. Yeah. This man used to be a Southern Baptist. So this is a transformation. The transformation from Orthodox Jew to devout Muslim, not very difficult. You trim the mustache and you're on your way. All right. So this photo was graciously provided to me by Father Justin of Sinai. It contains a copy of the original text dictated by the Prophet, peace be upon him, the signatures of his companions, may Allah be pleased with them, an image of the Jami Mosque, located at the heart of the Greek Orthodox complex, an image of the Mosque of Fatima, located at the peak of Mount Sinai, along with the hand of Muhammad, the hand of Sultan Selim I, and notarized statements by Muslim authorities confirming the authenticity of the manuscript in question. This is the covenant that is displayed in the foyer in the Monastery of St Catherine in the Sinai. So if you've ever been there, you've been fortunate to, I could speak for hours about all the different holy sites associated with this region. Okay, I have all kinds of pictures from there. It would take me several hours. But this is displayed in an area of the monastery where lots of visitors pass. Okay. There are half a dozen Arabic copies of the Covenant of the Prophet in scroll format at Mount Sinai. Some are dated, 1800, 1778, 1737, and so forth. Others are undated and may be much more ancient. There are several Arabic and Turkish copies of the covenants in codices. One of them dates back to 1638, another dates to 1561. There are also over 40 Turkish translations of the covenant in the Library of St. Catherine. Here are some early Arabic copies of the covenant. Okay, you have one here, another one here, another one here, and here is a modern typed version. Copies of the Sinai covenants are also found in other places. Here. Yes, this one here is actually was copied in 1858 at the Sinai dependency of Canea in Crete. There's also a copy at Mount Athos. If you think Harvard is selective, it looks like an unaccredited open admissions community college compared to the Simonopetra Monastery. At least Harvard gives you a rejection letter. The monks from Mount Athos, they do not acknowledge or respond to letters or emails or anything. It is notoriously difficult to go there and have access to their archives. As most of you here are scholars and students, I can already hear you screaming inside your heads, "I object! The document is too recent to be genuine. How can a 500-year-old covenant be considered authentic?" Well, fellow colleagues, it is time to take a trip back into time, to the days before the beginning of Islam. Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, was born in Mecca in the year 570. His father died before he was born. His mother died shortly thereafter. He was cared for by his grandfather, who died as well, and then was entrusted to his uncle Abu Talib, with whom he made 1 or 2 trips to Syria when he was in his mid-teens. He married Khadija at the age of 25 and proclaimed his prophecy when he was 40. That's all we know. There is thus a period of 10 years in the life of Muhammad, from the time he was 15 to the time he was 25, that is unaccounted for. There is also a second period of 15 years from the time he got married at the age of 25 until he declared his prophethood at the age of 40. That is equally unaccounted for. These 2 blocks of time represent 25 years of silence. Where on earth was Muhammad and what was he doing? Well, according to the monks of Mount Sinai, Muhammad was working at the Monastery of St Catherine. Blasphemy, heresy, revisionism. I can hear all the Islamists and jihadists sharpening their knives already. A few moderate scholars fume as steams come out of their ears. Others simply shake their heads in bewilderment. This account, however, is not new. It is ancient. It has been passed down consistently and accurately for over 1,400 years. It has been reported by pilgrims, travelers, and scholars for over 500 years and is based on both oral and written tradition. The oral history of the Christian monks, the oral history of the Jabali Muslim Bedouins, an ancient treatise authored by a monk from Mount Sinai, and the accounts of Christian and Muslim pilgrimage and Muslim pilgrims, which are as old as history itself. According to this account, Muhammad worked for the Monastery of St Catherine when he was a young man. Apparently, he was escaping socio-economic difficulties. Perhaps he was even escaping danger. A large number of accounts reveal that Muhammad's life was in danger from the day he was born. Many reveal that Christian communities had offered the child protection from his avowed enemies. These accounts are found in the most ancient of Muslim sources. While most Muslims know that Muhammad joined caravans when he was a teenager, few know that this was his occupation when he was a young man and a full-grown adult. According to ancient Christian, as well as Islamic sources, he was very well traveled. His journeys brought him to Egypt, to Syria, to Iraq, to Persia, to Oman, and perhaps as far as Abyssinia. It is therefore perfectly plausible that Muhammad traveled to the Sinai for purposes of trade. According to the monks from Mount Sinai, Muhammad used to lead caravans for them. He used to supply them. He actually spent many years living among them. A contemplative person, Muhammad used to meditate in the cave of Moses at the top of Mount Sinai, a site sacred to the Arab Bedouins of the region. So this is the cave where Moses apparently stayed when he was at Mount Sinai, and where Muhammad, following in the footsteps of Moses, also meditated. Okay? We know that it was his practice to do tahannuth, which means to isolate yourself from the community for a period of time, 40 days, where you would fast and meditate and pray. And we know that he was doing that on Mount Hira, okay, the mountain of light. And according to the monks of Mount Sinai, he used to do that as well on the top of Mount Sinai in the cave of Moses, which is also known as the cave of the Prophet Muhammad. One day, something deeply symbolic took place. While Muhammad was resting at the gate of the monastery, an eagle appeared and hovered over his head. The abbot, who witnessed the scene, realized its spiritual significance. The eagle is the symbol of the angel Gabriel. The eagle is a messenger of God. As an indigenous people, okay, we have the same thing. The eagle is a messenger from Manitou, the Great Spirit. Muhammad, it is related in ancient Muslim sources, was protected by Gabriel, who took the shape of a miraculous bird. Just like a cloud had followed Muhammad during his journey to Syria, an eagle was circling over his head. The abbot interpreted this singular occurrence as a sign that Muhammad would become a great and powerful leader. As such, the abbot invited him into the monastery, treated him with the greatest hospitality, and kindly requested that Muhammad grant special protections to the monastery. Muhammad, who was a poor camel driver who lived in exile, explained that he was not in a position to grant them protection. The abbot, however, insisted. As such, Muhammad granted them a patent of protection. He soaked his hand in a bowl of ink and signed the charter with his palm print. Many years later, relate the monks, Muhammad returned to Mecca, came into wealth, and eventually became the great and powerful leader that the abbot had predicted. And this is precisely what happened. He married Khadijat al-Kubra, proclaimed his prophethood, made the hijrah to Medina, and became recognized as a man to be reckoned with, the leader of an emerging power that would soon dominate the region. In the second year of the hijrah, a delegation of monks from Mount Sinai visited the Prophet Muhammad in Medina. They had not forgotten the promise that he had made, nor had the Prophet forgotten his commitment. The monks had taken him in when he was poor and weak, and now that he was wealthy and powerful, he intended to return the favor. As such, he provided them with the Achtiname, the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai, which reads, "In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. This covenant was written by Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, the proclaimer and warner, Bashiran wa Nadiran, trusted to protect Allah's creation, Wadiyat Allah fi khalqihi, in order that people may raise no claim against Allah after his messengers, for Allah is almighty, wise. He has written it for the members of his religion, Ahlal Millatihi, and to all those who profess the Christian religion in East and West, near or far, Arabs or non-Arabs, known or unknown, as a covenant of protection. If anyone breaks the covenant herein proclaimed, or contravenes or transgresses its commands, he has broken the covenant of Allah, breaks his bond, makes a mockery of his religion, deserves the curse of Allah, whether he is a sultan or another among the believing Muslims. If a monk or pilgrim seeks protection in mountain or valley, in a cave or in tilled fields, in the plain, in the desert, or in a church, I am behind them, defending them from every enemy. I, my helpers, all of the members of my religion, and all my followers, for they, the monks and the pilgrims, are my protégés and my subjects. I protect them from interference with their supplies and from the payment of taxes, save what they willingly renounce. There shall be no compulsion or constraint against them in any of these matters. A bishop shall not be removed from his bishopric, nor a monk from his monastery, nor a hermit from his tower, nor shall a pilgrim be hindered from his pilgrimage. Moreover, no building from among their churches shall be destroyed, nor shall the money from their churches be used for the buildings of mosques or houses for the Muslims. Whoever does such a thing violates Allah's covenant and dissents from the Messenger of Allah. Neither poll tax nor fees shall be laid on monks, bishops, or worshippers, for I protect them, wherever they may be, on land or sea, in east and west, in north and south. They are under my protection, within my covenant, and under my security against all harm. Those who also isolate themselves in the mountains or in sacred sites shall be free from the poll tax, land tribute, and from tithe or duty on whatever they grow for their own use. And they shall be assisted in raising a crop by a free allowance of 1 qada in every ardab for their personal use. They shall not be obliged to serve in war, or to pay the poll tax, even those for whom an obligation to pay land tribute exists, or who possess resources in land or from commercial activity, shall have to pay more than 12 dirhams a head per year. On no one shall an unjust tax be imposed, and with the people of the book there is to be no strife, unless it be over what is for the good. We wish to take them under the wing of our mercy, and the penalty of vexation shall be kept at a distance from them, wherever they are and wherever they may settle. If a Christian woman enters a Muslim household, she shall be received with kindness, and she shall be given opportunity to pray in her church. There shall be no dispute between her and a man who loves her religion. Whoever contravenes the covenant of Allah and acts to the contrary is a rebel against his covenant and his messenger. These people shall be assisted in the maintenance of their religious buildings and their dwellings. Thus they will be aided in their faith and kept true to their allegiance. None of them shall be compelled to bear arms, but the Muslims shall defend them, and they shall never contravene this promise of protection until the hour comes and the world ends. The Arabic copy that I worked from reads, this copy, which is copied from the original, is sealed with the signature of the noble Sultan. This reproduction was copied from the copy that was copied from the copy written in the handwriting of the leader of the believers, Ali ibn Abi Talib, may Allah bless his countenance. This covenant was written in his own hand by Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Mosque of the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, on the 3rd of Muharram in the 2nd year of the Prophet's Hijrah. It continues. A copy of this covenant has been deposited in the treasury of the Sultan. It was signed with the seal of the Prophet, peace be upon him. It was written on a piece of leather from Taif. Blessed be he who abides by its contents. Blessed be he, for he belongs to those who can expect the forgiveness of Allah. This document is unknown to the overwhelming majority of modern Muslim clerics. Most have never heard of it. Those who have heard of it only have a vague idea about it. They say, yeah, I heard about it, but I've never read it. I don't know anything about it. Is it authentic? Is it the real one? Is it a copy? Did the real one go back to Istanbul? Since it is allegedly not found in the Hadith, they state that it is contested or that it's certainly fake. That pretty much sums up the state of scholarship among the ulama. I'm sorry to say so, an asif walakin hadha al-haq. Simply because you ignore something does not mean that it does not exist or that it is not genuine. It just means that you are ignorant. And quite often, what parades around as knowledge is ignorance. The situation among academics is radically different. So far, over 36 articles, reviews, and interviews have been completed on the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the world. The book has been well received by Muslim academics. The book has been well received by Western Christian academics and secular academics. I stress Western for a reason. The only negative reviews the book has received come from Middle Eastern Arab Christians. Actually, they're people who would not identify as Arabs. They are those Middle Eastern Christians who believe that they are Europeans. Why do they reject the covenants of the Prophet? Without even looking at it, without even reading anything. No, can't be. Well, because they simply cannot conceive of Muslims as peaceful, tolerant people who treat religious minorities with respect. And you know what? I can't blame them for that. As some of these Middle Eastern Christians have told me frankly, directly to my face, who cares what the Prophet supposedly said 1,400 years ago? Actions speak louder than words. We see what's going on in the world. Christian churches are being bombed. Christian girls are being raped, tortured, mutilated, and murdered. Christian priests are being beheaded, chopped into pieces, and fed to dogs. I don't make this up. You can watch the videos. Entire Christian villages are being razed to the ground. All of this in the name of the Prophet and the name of Islam. So why is it that it takes a man like me, a Native American, a man from the Métis Nation of Canada, a Western revert to Islam, to speak out against such atrocities and say, enough is enough, not in my name, and certainly not in the name of the Prophet? My book contains something called the Covenants Initiative, which gives Muslims a way to raise their voices against these crimes. The initiative can be found on our website, covenantsoftheprophet.com. If Muslims remain silent in the face of crimes committed in their name, is there any wonder that they are accused of complicity? My struggle used to be religious. My struggle used to be spiritual. My struggle used to be political. But considering that one of my ancestors came from Al-Andalus, he was a Morisco, that he belonged to the Adarisa, that I descend from Mulay Idris, the great-grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, things have become personal. So I warn all of those takfiri terrorists and all those who support them ideologically, financially, and militarily. You are the enemies of Allah, Islam, the Prophet, and the Quran. Forgive me if I digress. Forgive me if I get political from this academic podium. However, Islam is inseparable from politics, and politics is inseparable from Islam. And the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad are profoundly political in intent and nature. And while some people wish to disguise their political opposition to the covenants under the guise of scholarly argumentation, their underlying intentions are evident. This is not to say that there are not sincere scholars who simply wish to ascertain their accuracy. My criticism is limited to a specific population, agents of the empire, people who have dedicated their entire lives to the destruction of Islam. Now that I have blown some steam and raised my blood pressure to dangerous levels, running the risk of a hypertensive crisis, I will return to the honest arguments of my opponents. But first, I will have a sip of water. Argument number one. The covenant is too recent to be authentic. The copies we have are 500 years old. Big deal. There are copies of the complete works of Shakespeare printed in 2014. Simply because we do not have the originals written in Shakespeare's handwriting does not mean that the Shakespeare we read today is not authentic. The oldest complete Quran dates from, 3 decades after the Prophet? The early books of Sirah date from 150 years after the Prophet. The official books of traditions date from 300 to 1,000 years after the Prophet. Some of them were compiled 1,000 years after the Prophet, yet they're all accepted as authentic by different Muslim groups. Argument number two. The Christians had a motive to forge the covenant. Well, if the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sharia, the letters of the Prophet, his treaties, and other covenants granted Christians protection, the motive is non-existent. Argument number three. The covenant is not mentioned in early sources. This is false. Early Christian sources like Mattis, Amrus, Bar Hebraeus all mention the covenant. Early Muslim sources like Ibn Ishaq, Tabari, Baladhuri, Ibn Sa'd, and Abu Yusuf also mention the covenant. Some of these sources mention the Christian delegations that visited the Prophet in order to obtain charters of protection. So some simply report that a delegation of Christians came to the Prophet and a charter was given to them. We don't know anything more. Okay? Some of them mention that a treaty was concluded with the monks of Mount St Catherine. The monks of St Catherine. Okay, so some are more specific. It's not just Christians. They specify where they came from. Some of them even cite from the Achtiname. Ibn Sa'd, for example, died 845 CE, speaks of a treaty of St Catherine. He estimated that it was concluded in the year 6 after Hijrah. Of course, nothing was dated back then. And so the scholars who were doing research and finding all of these sources, they had to, come up with some chronology, right? And so they were estimating more or less. So he thinks that this one dates from 6 years after the Hijrah. This is what it reads. Whatever goods that the neighbors of Allah and His Messenger have in their churches, monasteries, and bishoprics, however small or great they may be, will remain in their possession. No bishop is to be driven out of his bishopric. No monk is to be expelled from his monastery. No changes will be made with regards to their rights and sovereignty or anything in their possession, provided that they remain friendly towards Islam and Muslims. They will reform the rights incumbent upon them. They will not be oppressed, nor will they be oppressed. Thus, Ibn Saud's Treaty of St. Catherine is virtually the same as the Achtiname. Most of the sentences are identical, some of them word for word. So either this is a summary of the Achtiname, or it is a renewal of the Achtiname. The Prophet, as most historians know, used to renew his treaties and covenants on a yearly basis. So there's no doubt whatsoever that the Prophet made a treaty with the monks of Mount Sinai. And there is no doubt that the Prophet made similar covenants with other communities, be it the Christians of Egypt, Jerusalem, the Levant, Assyria, Persia, and the world. The covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai was respected by Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. It was even honored by the Umayyads of all people. It was followed by the Abbasids, the Fatimids, the Ayyubids, the Mamluks, and the Ottomans. The Monastery of St. Catherine has 1,742 Arabic and Turkish fatwas, including 210 royal mandates from 21 Ottoman sultans in succession, confirming the rights that the Prophet granted the monks. These fatwas were issued by Maliki fuqaha, jurists, Hanafi fuqaha, Hanbali fuqaha, Shafi fuqaha, and Shiite fuqaha. The earliest dates from 975 CE by Ismaili Shiite scholars, and the latest was issued in 1888 by Ottoman Sunni scholars. So how can one claim that the monks forged the covenant to protect themselves from the Ottomans in 1517? That's one of the arguments. The Ottomans were invading, they made this up so that they would be protected. But it existed before that. So how can one claim that the monks forged the covenant to protect themselves from Al-Hakim, the crazy Fatimid Caliph, when he threatened to attack the monastery in the year 1000? Okay, that's the other argument. They said Al-Hakim was going to attack, and then, they came up with this thing, and they presented it to him, and he said, okay, I'm not going to destroy the monastery. But we have fatwas from 975, and he attacked in the year 1000. It already existed, so that didn't motivate them to do so. The covenant already existed, and his predecessors had already endorsed its authenticity. There are also scores of Western scholars and religious authorities from the 1400s to the present who have confirmed the claims made concerning the covenant of the Prophet with the Monastery of St. Catherine. While most modern-day Muslims are not familiar with the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai, some of the leading contemporary scholars of Islam also treat it as genuine. You can check the Covenants Initiative. We have many, many leading scholars who stand behind these covenants. In a recent statement, the Monastery of St. Catherine had this to say about the Prophet Muhammad, his contacts with the monks of Mount Sinai, and the covenant he concluded with them. According to the tradition preserved at Sinai, Muhammad, peace be upon him, both knew and visited the monastery and the Sinai fathers. The Quran makes mention of these Sinai holy sites. In the second year of the Hijrah, corresponding to AD 626, a delegation from Sinai requested a letter of protection from Muhammad. This was granted and authorized by him when he placed his hand upon the document. In the year 1517, Sultan Selim I confirmed the monastery's prerogatives, but took the original letter of protection for safekeeping to the royal treasury in Constantinople. At the same time, he gave the monastery certified copies of this document, each depicting the handprint of Muhammad in token of his having touched the original. While there will always be naysayers, doubters, and obstinate unbelievers who seek to cast doubt on anything and everything that might reveal Islam as a positive force, most academics, I believe, will remain open-minded regarding the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the monks of Mount Sinai in the absence of definitive evidence demonstrating it to be a forgery. Some scholars believe the default assumption should be that something is fake. Others believe the default assumption should be that a hadith is authentic. I think most scholars would agree that we should just be neutral, okay? And we investigate and we research and, whatever we find, okay, we have to let the evidence lead to the conclusion. To date, no meticulous and agenda-free scholar, or any obviously prejudiced scholar either, for that matter, has presented any solid proof that the covenant is a fake. Anyone can claim that something is fake. That's easy. That's how you dismiss something you really don't want to deal with. That is how you sweep something under the rug. The burden of proof, however, belongs to the accuser. So you can't just say it's fake. End of story. Okay. Give me 200, 300, 400, 500 pages, give me 1,000 pages, prove to me that it is fake. So far, I haven't seen anything convincing. They're just these one-line denials. This is not to suggest that the Sinai covenant poses no problems. Not at all. It poses all sorts of problems. However, these are the same type of problems that we face when dealing with documents that are 500, 1,500, or 5,000 years old. If we consider Muhammad's extensive travels throughout the Greater Levant, his confirmed contacts with Christians in various regions, the remarkable stability of the account of his contact with the Monastery of St Catherine, the historic recognition of the Achtiname by both the monks of Mount Sinai and Muslim scholars from all schools of jurisprudence, the discovery of the Firman of Selim I in a Turkish collection, and the comparative study of the Prophet's numerous treaties and covenants, the evidence suggests that the Achtiname is indeed authentic. But, as we say in Islam to be safe, Allahu Alam. Since I'm in a scholarly milieu, I invite you all to spread the word of the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the world. I invite you to conduct more research on the Sinai covenant. Prior to my book, the only studies were conducted by Shuker in 1916 and Moritz in 1918. Although it generated centuries of scholarly discussion from the 1600s to the early 1900s, the Covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the World, published by Gabriele Sionita in 1630 and by Johann Georg Neissel in 1655, has been silenced for the past century. So in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, until the early 1900s, lots of scholars were discussing the covenant that was published by Sionita. So I think we need to renew scholarly interest in this covenant of the Prophet. I also urge you to examine the covenant brought back to Paris by Father Pacificus Scalinger, which dates from 1538. This is a discovery. This covenant has never been published before. It appears for the first time in my book. More work needs to be done on the covenant of the Prophet with the Assyrian Christians, which was brought to light by George David Malik in 1910. The same applies to the covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of Najran, which was published in the Chronicle of Surt in the 9th century, republished by Adai Sher in 1919, by Muhammad Hamidullah in 1956, and more recently by Muhammad Amara in the year 2002. I encourage you to study the Covenant of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of Persia, which only survives in a translation completed by Leon Arpi in 1948. There are also numerous other covenants of the Prophet Muhammad in existence. They're found in Palestine, Syria, and Turkey. We need to bring them into light. There's a call for papers that went out last month. I'm editing a follow-up volume titled Critical Studies on the Covenants of the Prophet. I invite any and all scholars to contribute studies on the letters, treaties, and covenants of the Prophet. We already have a formidable team of academics working on that, and you are welcome to join us. This is a fascinating new field, which I hope will stimulate scholarship for years to come. Peace between Muslims and the people of the book is indeed possible. And when I say people of the book, I mean both Christians and Jews. We are all the family of Abraham. Do not let the devils divide us. So, salam, shalom, and peace. Thank you.